What I'm going to talk about now is various topics in Microstock to not shoot and to shoot, and things that are in demand or things which are oversupplied at the moment. And I'll show you some charts of data that I've gathered on picNiche over the last few years that give a general indication of how the market's changing and how it's changed since about 2008. The picNiche rating is essentially a measure of the conversion rate of images, so the number of people who, upon seeing an image, actually buy the image against the competition for that particular topic or for that particular search. Oversupplied topics where there are too many images for the number of buyers searching for those, are oversupplied and they rate low. Undersupplied topics, so those where there are not enough images to meet the demand, rate high. It's not an ideal or perfect, it's not a hard fact measure, but it is a good indicator of how the various topics relate to one another. And it gives us some idea of what to shoot and what not to shoot. When aggregated, it's more than individual terms. It gives us an overall picture. Search volume data is a bit of an issue. As I said, it's conversion against competition rather than search against competition. But since search and conversion are interlinked, I generally assume that they're equal indicators. So while I don't have an awful lot of search volume data, I think my biggest sample set, because Microstock agencies don't make it available, is about 500,000 searches, but that's drawn from various different levels, including some free image users searches, which is a slightly different focus. But all in all, it gives us a good indicator as to how the market's leaning. So this is what I've learned from picNiche data. I'll start with downward trends. There's over the first few years of Microstock, everything was up. Absolutely everything. It was a new market. Buyers were finding it. Those who already had bought stock photos were pretty much amazed that they could now buy images for $1 that previously were hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So it went up and up and up on pretty much every topic. Most of my charts show a dip in these common topics starting around 2009-2010. I'll get into why once I've jumped through what we've got here. Animals, which used to be a Microstock mainstay, like a bread and butter, are all showing dips since early 2010. Dogs, birds, puppies, kittens, goldfish, chicken, these were common. Now they're on the way down. They still rate higher than they did 2 years ago, and partly because of new incoming buyers. The agency's doing quite a good job of bringing new buyers in continually, but they are on their way down. I expect it to be about a 3-year downward cycle before they're lower than they were about 2 years ago. And we see the same on business trends, which maybe started a little earlier, with business meetings, success handshakes, brainstorming, financial teamwork. These are all common Microstock topics that various blogs and sites and other photographers are saying that this is what new incoming photographers should be shooting. And unless they're shooting it at a very high quality level, they really shouldn't. Ultimately it's a waste of time unless you really know what you're doing. Female topics, these started dipping in the first or second quarter of 2009, more or less. And this is businesswoman, mother, receptionist, secretary, and beauty. These topics started dipping early because they were one of the first things that new photographers joining Microstock in about 2007-2008 started producing. And subsequently they won't have been getting the return per image for that for much of this time, unless they're producing high quality work. Male topics: businessmen, leadership, success, challenge, action, sport. You see there's a similar downward trend to the female, but it's a little later. People are still buying male images more than they're buying female images, or more people are producing female images because there's a perception that that's what the market wants, which it was what the market wanted. But with the male trends seem to be outlasting the female trends a little bit more, although they're still on a downward slope. Family topics, we see very much the same. Baby, child, family, friendship, father, house, home. We see the same downward trend from somewhere in 2009 as we do with female topics, where it was a rapid rise and then there's generally a slow fall. We see the same again with seniors. This is something that's got me for the last couple of years, because pretty much every top level photographer in 2009, 2008, 2009 was telling new photographers that they should be shooting seniors because there weren't enough. And this shows that, at that point there weren't enough, but then a lot of people jumped on the seniors bandwagon and started shooting retirement images and healthy grandma and senior, that kind of thing, which has sort of started to wear out that what was a niche has become a mainstream topic. We see much the same with seasons. We can see the rise and fall throughout each year of, for example, New Year, of snow, of spring, Christmas. You see where these peaks are during the year, but there's no longer a general rise as there was in 2008-2009. There was these peaks and troughs, but generally the direction was up. Now there are still peaks and troughs, but generally the direction is slightly down. Positive emotions is another example of this. Happy, laughing, cheerful, love are all on the way down. It's kind of, there are enough happy, smiling people in Microstock. And objects. This was my mainstay when I started. My bread and butter was light boxed objects, and I started out doing exactly the same desk objects as everybody had done in 2004, 2005. I didn't get any sales on them whatsoever. So I did some alternative, slightly different ones. I did brandless mobile phones, I did music boxes, kind of slightly less shot objects. And there was a lot of rise in them then. They're still some of my best sellers now. But on the whole, things like isolated objects are well down. Isolated objects have been on the way down since sometime in 2007. Bottles, money, fruit, computers, and even buildings, we've seen a dip there. These particular topics are no longer sustainable because everybody is shooting them. Like all the others, downward trends are almost all due exclusively to increased competition. There are more new photographers producing work in an attempt to compete with established photographers, and essentially what it's doing is muddying the waters. It makes things harder for image buyers to find agencies have to write more aggressive search algorithms to deal with the volume that they have, which is more favourable to the established photographers than to the new photographers. Essentially, don't waste your time. If you're going to shoot any of the topics I've just run through, you must be great at what you do, and you must be producing great images. You then have to take that and improve them over time. You can't just produce, say, 5,000 business images today and expect it to be a long-term proposition in terms of revenue, unless they are really fantastic images. So I go on to upward trends, and we look the kinds of upward trends. They were actually quite hard to find looking through my data, and most of them show a slow growth rather than the rapid growth we were getting in 2008. We can see here we have some places showing a rise. We've got Amsterdam, Toronto, Singapore, Portugal, Stockholm, Switzerland. They're the kinds of places. They're not New York, Paris, London, Moscow. They're the places generally next to those places. Everybody's got all the shots of London, Paris, New York they could ever want. These kinds of locations aren't as shot, and they're not generally as touristy as Paris, London, New York, those typical places that everybody has hundreds of images of. They're a bit more harder to get to, or a bit more exotic. And they occasionally have some kind of meaning as well. So Greenwich, for example, is universally recognised as the dateline. So all over the world there will occasionally be people writing articles and blog posts and things about time where they want a picture of Greenwich. Hungary, Budapest, Nepal is particularly exotic. Quebec, Strasbourg, Philadelphia, they're not really the main cities, they're places where there are still opportunities. We're also seeing an upward lift in music. So this is generally the less used instruments, or the more academic instruments, rather than guitar and keyboard or guitar and piano. It's things like drummers and bands and banjos and harmonicas. This is part of the kind of new online social environment, is that there are a lot of bands, there's a lot of talk about music and creativity. This is part of the reason Microstock has reached a plateau, is because social media has brought so many more people to the web that you can't really produce images about social media anymore. It's kind of done. But if you produce images for the topics that people who use social media talk about or work with, so particularly teenagers, young adults, and even now 30s, 40s and baby boomers to some extent, are using the internet more and more, and the things that they deal with are becoming more relevant. Energy, this is a pretty thin topic, but there's opportunities in here for biofuel, geothermals, wind power, transportation. It's kind of, you need to think outside the box, but there's room in energy or alternative energy, clean energy, carbon, what do they call it, carbon exchange or carbon trading. Gay lifestyle is still on an upward trend. There's a lot of changing attitudes, particularly in the West, to the gay lifestyle. It's become a lot more mainstream than it used to be, and therefore the demand for images in that market has developed, with people trying to capitalise on what we call in the UK at least the pink pound. There's plenty of room there. Negative emotion is another area where there is an undersupply of images. particularly with mental illness and issues associated with depression or social order or social disorder. People generally don't shoot these because they're not happy shots to produce. Just some extra random pieces: toddlers, voodoo, pandas, ophthalmologists, I would presume, dentistry, various other everyday working roles. White collar workers would be in demand here as well. Some other opportunities that I noticed in the database, these are downward trends, but they're downward trends with a lot of room in them. They still have high picNiche ratings. So a few examples here: we've got medical imagery, scientific principles, cheerleading, drugs and alcohol, dolphins, construction, active workers, technology infrastructure, social media. Not so much room, but it's got enough if you can produce interesting images, not the same title 3D man stood on a network type thing. Bonsai, lacrosse. You'll notice most of these are related to established stock markets, they're stock topics, but are tangential or satellite topics to the main things that people already produce. These upward trends exist mainly because of image buyers in new markets, primarily in South America and in Asia, but also to some extent in Africa. Higher expectations from existing buyers. They've already, the corporations essentially have already purchased all the cheap, low quality images, and they generally can't use the same images as either their competition or as their old content, their old brochures, their own old reports. So they need new, better, higher quality images, and there is a small proportion of photographers producing for them. And new fashions in imagery. The clothes change, the casual styles change, the business changes, the looks on the faces even change, just from year to year. So you need to be able to produce new images on an ongoing basis to match the new fashion. This is even more relevant for illustrators, where the illustration style changes quite significantly about every 6 to 9 months. Just a year or two ago, the grunge imagery was absolutely everywhere. Now it's fallen off a little, given way more to this clean pastel style, the kind of look driven by Twitter. Has become a lot more common than the grunge style that was around a few years ago, and demand for illustrations is reflecting that style or that fashion. There are very few topics that I can find that are currently on a consistent uptrend. There's lots of opportunity, but those opportunities that are there are slowly being eroded by new photographers. In general, you want to be focusing on the following. Alternative lifestyle, as I've said before, things like gay lifestyle, alternative family units, and the issues associated with that. Luxurious life images, there's a lot more corporate, commercial, upselling generally throughout the world, and there's an associated demand in luxurious images to go with that, particularly with markets like China coming in somewhat, not so much into the Western market, but coming online, and so many people trying to capitalize on that changing environment. The luxurious life images present quite a big opportunity. Exotic locations are important. Anywhere that isn't the capital or isn't the major point of interest, go next to that, get the shot that isn't the one everybody else has. You should also look more at people at work and play, but active, not fake, on white images. You need to be focusing on interesting, active, live imagery. You should also kind of look at highly styled cultural images. Focus on images that are highly relevant to, say, China or to South America, and you'll find that there are various markets there that exclusively buy certain types of image. If you can produce that type of image, you'll be a leader in that particular zone or in that niche or collection of niches. I'd also look at footage. Take pretty much any Microstock image that's been successful in the last 4 years and make a video of that essentially same image. Over the next 3 years it will sell as much, at least revenue wise, as those images. This is particularly relevant because of tablets and new style ebook readers and the large format mobile phones, and even these new digital paper technologies. The big thing is that they're going to put moving pictures inside newspapers by using digital paper. It's a couple of years off, but we're coming down that path, and footage, if you get in there in the right place and predict that demand, you should be in a good position. And also, if you have the opportunity, look at 3D imagery, as in for 3D devices, particularly with 3D televisions becoming more popular. Yes, they are a fad, but as 3D imagery improves, I expect that to become more and more relevant in the marketplace. Even if it's only to a small market, there's still a lot of room there, because nobody at all is producing 3D stereoscopic images. These won't stay the same forever. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you need to research and review your own portfolio and the agencies that you sell through. You need to be planning your production and weighing up what your image buyers need. So you want to read their blogs, read their news, and use Google Image Search or TinEye, PicScout to identify who's using your images and which images they're most using and how they're shot and how they worked and what keywords you apply to them. If you can, comment on their blogs, develop a connection to that side so they know you as a producer of images that they buy. And maybe next time they'll visit your website and follow your links to your portfolio on the Microstock sites. I wouldn't necessarily suggest direct selling, because that comes with its own issues. From what I've seen, typically traditional stock photographers prefer direct selling where convenient, but Microstock sellers are generally happy to send the buyer to the agency, not only because they know they'll get a consistent price, but because that they handle the money, the transfer is already in place, it's easy and convenient. Check the return on investment for your shoots. Keep a track of, if you pay your models, how much do you pay them and how much do they make you. If you pay for locations, presumably you pay for gear. Check if you're actually getting the money back from your sales to pay for your gear, your locations, your props, your planning, your transport, the rest of your business. And most importantly, if you really want to develop your business, innovate, collaborate, and communicate. By these I mean to innovate and look at what's coming up ahead of you, look at how your business needs to develop in future, Think about new ways to reach your image buyers, to promote your portfolio. Don't be content with the same old thing you've been doing for the last 5 years. It's not going to work very much longer. If it's still working for you at all, there's a lot of people complaining about large drops in their RPI since about mid-2009. You should also collaborate with other photographers, or if you're an agency, with other agencies, or with affiliates, with web developers, with people who want to make money with you. Collaborate with them. There's so much opportunity there that Microstock agencies aren't able to connect to, partly because they just don't understand it. This is one of the revolutions that Apple sort of did, is by crowdsourcing essentially their app development. They developed a multi-billion-dollar market out of something that nobody really thought about doing before, and that's just collaboration. And communicate. If you produce a new series of images, tell your image buyers about it. Tell them why you shot it, what benefit will these images have for your image buyers. They don't want to be reusing the same old images every year or every month, or however often your market uses images. Tell them you've got new work available. Sean Locke is particularly quite good at this. His website is pretty much a perfect example of marketing equally to buyers and to contributors, because he shares helpful information, but he also features like boxes, and there's a few people doing that kind of thing, but even Yuriakus and Andres Rodriguez and Pressmaster haven't really jumped onto this yet. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It can be good if you do it right, but it can be a huge time sink if you're not doing it effectively. So you need to be careful, but it's still worth doing. Just make sure you do it right. Well, I'll take a short break here, and when I come back, I'll talk about the future for Microstock.